We got a lot of portables. Let's talk about them. What's going on, everybody? I go by the name of Stikz. This is level 857. And there's been a lot of discussion going on about portable PCs. They've come a long way, and they're pretty fast. They can run almost everything. From your old school games onto the new school, at least up to, I'd say, about PS2, PS3 era, Xbox 360, all the way up to your AAA PC titles, to a certain extent. There's a lot of things good and bad about them. I have currently the Asus R.O.G Ally, Valve's Steam Deck, and I have the GPD Win 4. All of them, regardless of how you feel about them, have their pluses and their minuses. So I guess I will start with the Steam Deck since it's the oldest in the bunch. These are my impressions, quick impressions. Positives. The Steam Deck is more like a console than the other handhelds. Less like a PC, more like a console. This runs Linux. I like the feel of it. Like it in hand, it feels great. The buttons in the back aren't hard to hit, but they aren't, you don't hit them by mistake. They're pretty sturdy. You can hold this pretty much the way you want without hitting those back buttons. And that's important. That is very important. The buttons aren't mushy. They're slightly clicky, not bad. The analog sticks on here are quite good. They don't have a lot of travel, but it feels good. The grip itself on your thumb is a bit slippery. It has little grooves on the edges, but the middle of it, your thumb, if you are playing for a while, your hand might get sweaty or whatnot, and it might slide off of there, especially if you're trying to do a lot of stuff with precision. But the tension in them is good. The D-pad is decent. Well, they have the two buttons at the top. Usually this is like a start button, select button, back button, whatever they are on the joysticks now. Your menu buttons on the bottom here, there are two buttons on the bottom that are like Steam equivalent buttons for menu. They are slightly raised. You can feel it a bit better. I've heard that the original ones that came out, they were too indented in the machine and you couldn't really tell where they were. Now they're okay. Yeah, the speakers on this guy are pretty loud, exceptionally loud. I have no complaints about the audio quality on this guy. The grip of the system itself, I like that it comes out a little bit and it stays thin in the middle. Feels good. You have your USB-C at the top. You have your power button. You have your vents for the fan here and also in the back. So at the top and in the back, your volume buttons and your 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. Yeah, your stereo speakers are in the front. Your L&R and then your L&R triggers, 4 buttons at the top. The triggers have a bit of travel. It doesn't go too crazy. You do hit quite fast, but it is analog. And on the bottom of your Steam Deck here, you have your micro SD card. That's pretty much it on here. Another positive for this, the screen size. 7-inch screen, awesome. You can see most everything on your AAA titles from PC at a 800p resolution, which isn't bad on a screen this size. I love the customization of the Steam Deck. I actually made it look quite a bit different than the standard. I don't know if you can see on there. There you go. I made it look a little bit different than the standard look. And there's plugins that you can use for it. So it's kind of like the Android of the whole situation. I like it a lot. Ease of use, very easy. Most of the games you try and play do play. Valve updates this quite a lot. So you do get a lot of support from them. And I appreciate that. They're constantly making all the games run better. It's Steam. I buy all my games on Steam. So they're getting all their money from me. We're all buying the stuff on there. So that's why it's not super expensive to get something like this. My gripes with it now. Everyone, you haven't noticed that I didn't mention the trackpads because to me, I don't think that the trackpads is a positive on this machine. The fact that the trackpads are the size that they are on here makes it so that the D-pad and the buttons are in different places. Now, a lot of people don't complain about where it is on the system, how everything is in a line at the top. No joystick that I ever had the buttons placed in such a way. So it's a little bit awkward because all the way on the left, your D-pad kind of slides off of the device, slightly. Also, the B button on the right-hand side slightly is off the side of the system. Not the ideal spot for these things. The buttons could have been a little bigger. The trackpad, I understand if you're playing a lot of PC games, a lot of older games, a lot of strategic games, real-time strategy games, MMOs. A lot of those require the use or, you know, the customization that you have with the trackpad. I give it, you know, it gives it a reason to be there. A lot of those people cannot play any of these systems without something like that. Me, on the other hand, I never use it, ever. I mean, there might be a time if you're on the Linux operating system on desktop mode where maybe it's easier to move the mouse cursor around. It has rumble, it has force feedback, which makes it feel like a roller ball, which is interesting. But if you push in on it, it's not a click and it moves the cursor. So it kind of renders that useless to me. And the one on the left, I never used the trackpad on the left. I do wish that they just moved that away. Just didn't have that. If you're gonna have it on the right only. Put the D-pad or the analog where the left trackpad is. That's just me. Then you can make the system a little less wide, and I would appreciate it to be more portable. I would love a Steam Deck Mini, but I do like the screen size. Leave the screen size the same or get rid of the bezel, make the screen even larger. That would be great. Negative on all of these devices, battery life. If you're using it portably, if you're playing something like a AAA PC title, you're gonna get about an hour, hour and a half, somewhat like that. Now the positive about the Steam Deck and its battery, it can run things at a lower wattage that will let you play longer. So if you're playing something like an indie game, or if you're emulating something from like 8-bit, 16-bit era of gaming, you can get up to 4 hours, 5 hours even. It runs things at a lower wattage to give you more battery life. If you're playing newer titles, 3D titles, it can run those at a smoother rate at a lower wattage to give you more battery. It only goes up to 15 watts, but it can run things in like 5 watts or lower even. So yeah, that's a positive there and a negative because the battery, yeah, portably. Plug it in if you want to play stuff at the highest rate possible and the smoothest. It runs in 40 frames per second, 60 frames per second, 30 frames per second. It's nice. It is nice. The tech is a bit old now. There are devices that run things faster. So let's move on to those. So next in the bunch is the GPD Win 4. This is the next one I bought after the Steam Deck. I got this one because it was faster. It has a faster AMD chipset in it. I got this one because of the form factor. It looked like a PSP. It looked like a PSP on steroids. The fact that it's a bit smaller in form factor, which is a plus and a negative. So, like always, let's do the positive first. First things first. Screen slides up. There is a QWERTY keyboard embedded in the device under the screen, which is great, especially with dealing with Windows because Windows is in here. It's basically a handheld PC. It can run everything Windows can do. So if you want to run Microsoft Office, if you want to run DJ software, Adobe, DaVinci, Resolve, anything. If you want to run that stuff on here, you can. If you're in a pinch and you need to hook up a keyboard and mouse, if you want to use it as your regular PC, you can hook it up to a TV, you can hook it up to a monitor. You can actually use this as a bona fide PC. If I didn't mention, all these devices can be hooked up to your television via USB-C to HDMI or a dock. The speakers on here, super loud. All of these handhelds have amazing speakers. Now, a feel in hand for this guy, it's like I said, smaller. 7-inch screen on the Steam Deck, and this one is a 6-inch screen. Dramatic difference in size when playing these games. This system is actually portable. You can put it in a jacket, a purse, a pocket of baggy jeans. It can fit in there. It is a bit thick, a bit thicker than the other systems. Preferably, I would have liked it to be thinner, but like I said, there's an entire PC in here. Your analogs and everything on the front, super small. Your buttons, smaller than the Steam Deck, They are minuscule, but still usable. So size comparison between the Win 4 and the Steam Deck. Pretty big difference, right? Your analogs, still decent travel. You do have better grips at the top, so your thumbs don't feel like they're gonna slip off. I put grips on the top of these to try it. It was fine, but what it did was make the analog stick a bit too big at the top. So when I went to hit the buttons, my fingers got in the way and were hitting the analog stick. So I took them off. So it's not a problem. It's very close now when I'm hitting the button to hitting the analog, but it's not a bad thing right now. Another thing on here, they do have a trackpad on this also. And on the other side, they have a fingerprint sensor. Awesome. I appreciate that a lot because so basically it has a hardware keyboard and a tiny touchpad. I wish, and this is what the Steam Deck should have done. Like I said, on the right-hand side, nothing on the left as far as trackpad. Can they put a fingerprint sensor on the power button and then put two tiny trackpads in the front for people who need a trackpad on the left and right? Okay, I'm down for that if they wanted to. I love the fact that they have the trackpad right here as your thumb, because as you're moving the cursor, that's all you really need to use it correctly, especially if you're using Windows on here. It works phenomenally and it's super tiny. So if they put if they put that trackpad on the Steam Deck, on the corner, made the Steam Deck smaller, that would be perfect, Valve. So yeah, I like that. I like the curves on the system. It feels good. It has a little bump on the back where your hands go. It's not as grippy as the Steam Deck, but it's enough. Would I have liked the middle to be thinner? Like I said, yes. With the grips to be more like the Steam Deck, yes. But what it is, you can still get a good grip. There's 2 buttons on the back, not 4. The Steam Deck had 4. This has 2. They slightly have an indentation here, so you know where they are, but you don't hit them by mistake. You have to intentionally hit them when you're using it. I appreciate that. So just going around the system itself, vents in the back, never uncomfortable to hold, but it does get hot. You do hear the fans on this guy and on the Steam Deck, but they do get exceptionally louder on here. If you're playing a game with the volume up, you probably won't hear it at all. If you got headphones on, you won't hear it at all. If you're playing it next to somebody in bed while they're trying to sleep, they will hear. If they're a light sleeper, they will hear the fan. You have a USB-A port, USB 3. You have a USB-C at the top, and you have a USB-C at the bottom. It's 3 ports. That's awesome. Especially if you have something like the X-Rail glasses. You can plug that directly in here, no adapters or anything needed. You can plug it directly in the USB-C up here on the bottom. And you can plug your power. You still plug your power cable in to keep both of those powered. Awesome. You don't have to have anything hanging off the system to add to that. No docks, nothing like that, no adapters. You have your volume buttons here. They're opposite to the usual, but it's okay. And then you have an analog-based L and R trigger here. You don't get a lot of travel whatsoever, but you do get enough. Well, you know, if you're playing racing games or you need like a trigger for your first person shooters, then you got that. You got your L and R buttons, clicky at the top here. Pretty nice. They actually have LED lights in them, so very subtle, but you can change the color of them, or you can have them just rotate colors in and out. Not bad. So front-facing stereo speakers. Start button, usually. I mean, I don't know what they actually call the buttons, but on the front here, start button, select button, your usual stuff there. You also have a menu button at the bottom here that people usually forget about. That's like your Xbox button. So you can set that. That's a button that people forget about. You have your little hole here for your lanyard that comes with the system also. And you have vents at the top. Pretty big holes there for the vent. You have your 3.5mm jack at the top here also. And on the right-hand side here, you have your reset button. If you ever get into trouble and need to hit that, you need a little pin to stick that in there and it'll do it. On the left-hand side here, you have your micro SD slot. And you have a slider here, which is for either controller mode or mouse mode. So if you go to mouse mode, then you can use your analog sticks as your cursor. You know, I never use that. I just leave it usually on controller mode. So everything on here acts like a control pad. And then you still have access to your touchpad here. So you can control the mouse that way. So I don't really go into just mouse mode. Maybe some games require it, or maybe some applications in Windows require that. It's cool that they have a little switch here for it. It's sturdy. There's no qualms I have with the construction of this guy. It is from China, so customer support is a little iffy. So if anything was to happen, or if you get a faulty device, very hard to get in contact over in China, or you'll have to ship it to China. You have to pay for shipping. You have to fix the device, or they'll send you a piece to fix. It's crazy. Hopefully you get something that doesn't break. I mean, that's always a worry when you're dealing with something from overseas, whether you're gonna get a defective unit or something like that. For the most part, from what I've seen from my device, hardware-wise, flawless. Nothing's been wrong with this guy. They did have a thing where you needed to flash something inside the device to get the frames per second right, because something they did was wrong. It did come out with a firmware update that fixed it. There is a way to flash that directly in the system without opening anything to fix that. I found it on Reddit. After that, everything's flawless on this device. I have no complaints about it, except for my negatives. So let's get into the negatives. The screen size. I bought this for the portability of it because it was smaller and reminded me of the PlayStation Portable. I never had a problem with PlayStation Portable because those games were optimized for the screen size that it was. So when looking at it, I was like, wow, a powerful PlayStation Vita. I really would like an update that plays everything, plays all my Steam games. So when I got it, my first impression was, wow, this is thick. It's thick. The system is thick, and it's got some density to it. It's heavy. So, I mean, okay, ideally it would have been nicer to be lighter. Your buttons on here, exceptionally small. Clicky, yes, but weird because they're not standard button size. They do have the Xbox layout, the AB, XY layout, and inside of the buttons themselves, you can see the PlayStation layout where it says triangle, square, circle, X, or cross. But that's in there, so you can see that. It doesn't have the Nintendo layout, which would have been preferable. So for people saying they wanted this because it was like an upgrade to the PSP or the PS Vita, here's the comparison. PSP is tiny, right? Look at that. PSP has a D-pad like a PlayStation controller, where each thing is segmented in the front here. They're not connected. So you get a good way to do your angles, your circular, half circle motions, all that stuff. Works fine there. Now, this D-pad on the Win 4 is more like the Vita. So comparison there, size-wise. You see? There you go. Comparison-wise there. Closer, actually. Your D-pad on the Vita is more similar to the Win 4. But the Win 4's D-pad is like a cross. They're all connected. But the difference being, it's just way more stiff than the Vita. You can feel the indents as you move around on the Vita's control pad. On the Win 4, you can't, because it feels so much more shallow, and your pivot on here isn't as deep. Yeah, I wish they copied the Vita's D-pad completely perfectly. I don't know why they just settled and said, yeah, this is good. So being as shallow as it is, playing stuff that needs precision, like say a 2D platformer or a fighting game, like a Street Fighter. If you're trying to move precisely left and right, I guess it's okay, but your angles, your corner movements are so close to those that you will sometimes hit that wrong. So if you're trying to do anything precision-wise, it's not gonna be good at all. Renders it useless. So unfortunately, that's a big downside to this guy. But the fact that the analog stick is right next to it and is a good trade-off as far as precision when you're trying to use stuff like that. Plus, most of the modern games use the analogs more so than the D-pad. It's okay, because the analogs are much better than the D-pad. But if you're doing half circles to try and do a fireball, might as well do it on the analog. Get used to it, because on the D-pad, really gotta move your hand precisely while you're doing that. And in the heat of battle, it's not gonna happen, right? Uppercuts, you can't do them, basically. Not with this D-pad. Analog, yes, you can easily. Fingerprint sensor right there. It's good for security. And that's pretty much everything about this guy. But all right, so let's go back to the screen. This is a negative because of the size of the screen when playing AAA newer titles. If you're playing at 1080p, which this device does, it makes the words unreadable most of the time. There's no real adjustment in most of the games that I've tried on here to increase the size of those words. Is it a deal breaker for me with this device? No, because if you're using it for emulation, if you're using it to play titles like Game Boy Advance, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, PSP, PS Vita, or games that just don't require you to read much on the screen, those games were optimized to play on a screen much smaller than even this. So those work fine. Most games for that matter, unless you're playing role-playing games or text-based games, yeah, those are all fine on here. But when you are playing something that requires you to read a lot, I wouldn't recommend using the screen that's built in on here. Now, if you have something like the X-Real glasses, formerly known as N-Real, but if you have something like that, you plug it in here, you have a 100-inch screen in your face. For my case, if need be, if I need to use a portable screen, preferably with those glasses, it makes the screen size not that big of a deal. For some games, it's just not usable. So those are my biggest gripes with this system. Which brings us to the newest addition of the bunch, the Asus R.O.G Ally. Size comparison here, check it out. Yeah, a bit bigger than the Win 4. Not quite as big as the Steam Deck. So let's get into this here. All right, the Ally. I do like the feel of this system. It's a lot lighter than you would assume from the size. It's lighter than the Steam Deck, and it's lighter than the Win 4. Feel in hand, it has a little grips on the back here so you can hold it. I got used to how it feels to hold this. It's not as much of a handle as the Steam Deck has, but it is enough to hold. You hold a little different. You hold your hand up like this, but I don't know, a lot of people who play with their fingers at the top, with fingers on all the triggers, I don't play like that. I don't do that, so I have my hands in the back. There are buttons on the back here. There's 2 buttons. They're in an odd space, I should say, but we'll discuss that more on the negative side, because it's definitely not a positive. Maybe positive because it's easy to hit, I don't know. We're gonna talk about that though. All right, let's talk about the design. I like the design. It's in white. A lot of people waiting for it to be in black. I don't mind, actually. It's not catching any dirt or anything like that. As far as now, I'm sure at some point it will. The screen on here, 7-inch screen. It's at 120 hertz. The other devices are 60 hertz, 120 frames per second. Will it run on most games? Probably not. It can though, and it's smooth. It's a lot better than the touch input on the Steam Deck. So I give it that. The colors are better on here. They're brighter, more vivid. The Win 4's colors on their screen, I adjusted a little bit. Still great. I added the vivid mode on the Steam Deck to make that a bit brighter, but between all the screens, the Steam Deck has the worst screen. But ideally, this is the form factor I would have liked the Steam Deck to be. With the touchpad that the Win 4 has. If that was here, that would be chef's kiss perfect. I would have enjoyed that. It would have been perfect on here because you're still dealing with Windows on this system. And if I had a touchpad, it would be so much easier to use. Right now, they have you use the analog stick. It's okay. It's okay. It's not something I would use a lot. The analogs on this controller feel a bit higher, but it's weird because they're placed lower in the system. So I don't know, range of motion on here is looser than the other systems. Not a big fan of the analog sticks on the Ally. I do like the grips in them though. The grips in these are great. They're probably the best grips of the bunch out of the systems I have here. But like I said, the motion from pushing all the way, the tension in this just isn't right to me. It's too loose. But I don't play a lot of analog based games like first person shooters or anything like that on something like this. So what's cool, it has RGB lighting around the analog sticks, which some people don't care about, but I think it gives a pretty cool aesthetic to it. But like I said, I wish the analogs moved a bit better. It has front facing speakers, booming system. Like I said, no complaints on the speakers of any of these systems. The D-pad. A lot of people saw this D-pad. It's a circular D-pad. Usually, that's not a good look. Like that's what's on. It's similar to what's on a Xbox Series controller. A little circular with the little indents that push out. At first glance, I was like, okay, daggone it. Why couldn't they make a good D-pad? Out of the D-pads on these portable systems here, this one probably has the best of the bunch, surprisingly, but there's still a problem with it with diagonals. So like I said, none of these have a perfect control pad. Still a problem with diagonals. You still get misreads when you're pushing up, right, left, and down. If you're playing something like Tetris, which requires precise movements with this controller, you will sometimes mess it up just off the bat, just trying to move it around. But if you're playing something like Street Fighter, you can do your half circles much better. You can do uppercut motions a lot easier on this pad also. And you better get used to doing it on this control pad, because using it on the analog on this, no, not good. You cannot. So instead of the other systems where you can use the analog as a replacement for the D-pad in most things, for this is you use the D-pad and get used to how that is used, or nothing, because you're not playing a 2D game with the analog sticks on here. The tension just is not right. There's also a button here that you hit that'll take you out of the user interface of Windows 11 and put you in their Armory interface here, which leads you to directly going to your games, everything installed for your games, regardless of what launcher you have, whether you have like the Epic Stores launcher, Steam, the GOG launcher, like all that stuff you can integrate directly into this Armory SE here, which is a good workaround. I applaud them for doing something like that. If you don't want to go into the UI of Windows, they're trying to simplify it, make it more like a gaming system. The Win 4 didn't have anything like that. You just use it like you do. You can download, listen, like I said, it's Windows. You can download your own. You can download your own thing there to run similar. Like what do I have on here? It's a thing called Play Night, Play N-I-T-E. Play Night, it's an app where if you run it, so it'll give you that secondary interface to see your games from all those launchers in one spot. And you can use that on anything that runs Windows, so that's pretty cool. But that's just one of the things that running Windows offers you, because people can make apps for it that run and do things that you'd like it to. So you can customize it the way you like, for the most part. And I think that evolution is going to get better as portable gaming on Windows gets more popular. So to go around this a little bit, they have a eGPU thing here on the top where it's proprietary, and you have to get it. You have to get a link to hook it up to a graphics card. I mean, it would be a cool idea if the graphics cards didn't cost more than a gaming desktop with the equivalent power. And the graphics card that you can hook it up to, they use laptop power, which is not as good as a desktop powered graphics card. And if you're paying $2,000 for a graphics card to hook up to this guy, to hook up to your TV, just buy a $2,000 gaming desktop. It'd be much better than this. I don't think that that's a plus, that they have this big link there for it. I don't like it. It's right next to the USB-C, which is confusing because you can't really see it when you're plugging in anything, so you have to directly look in there and find it. Not a fan. But you have one USB-C, nothing else input-wise, so it's like a Steam Deck in that regard. You have your micro SD card right up here, and right next to that you have your 3.5 millimeter jack for your headphones. You have your volume controls there, and LED lights next to that telling you what's going on with the system. You have your power button, which is also integrated fingerprint sensor, and you have your exhaust fans blowing out your vents up here, also in the back, all around the back, which is good. And I gotta say, their exhaust fans, the quietest of the bunch. You can barely hear it, if at all. So if there's a problem and you need it to be quiet because you're playing the games next to people who need to sleep, this one is awesome because it is relatively quiet. The fans, there's two fans in here and they're quiet. You have your LNR buttons and your LNR triggers. And like I said, you have decent travel in here, nothing crazy, but they are quiet. Now, let's talk about the negatives, because this will be fun. Let's start off with, I really love this system. I really enjoy the power of it, how it runs games. Top of the line screen, top of the line frames per second. It really is pretty great. Now, if you talked to me last week even, I said, this is great. I think it does enough of what I want as far as performance-wise, that I will sell my Steam Deck and my Win 4. Because there's no reason to have two portable Windows devices. And this did enough performance-wise better than the Steam Deck that I didn't need the Steam Deck, because I wasn't going to use the trackpads on the Steam Deck. I was willing to let the analog looseness slide because it's still playable. It was fine. I was willing to let the D-pad slide because out of the three, it was still the better D-pad. But people have been having troubles with this device since its release. It's not even a month old, I don't believe. The problems have been piling up on this device. A lot of people complain about all of the updates that Windows has to do, which is a common complaint that Windows has. And I was like, okay, be patient. I think that this system is going to evolve into something great, because the updating of the system at least shows that the development of the system is moving and improving. So what Asus did when this was first released, they gave it an update to the firmware, which increased performance by 20%. It's like, oh, cool, that's great. The day of release that this came out and people got their hands on it, there was a newer firmware that they added. It's like, oh, they're really trying. They're doing great with this device. They got another update. Let's get the positives going. Let's get the improvements. Let's get the firmware. We did that firmware, and depending on the game you're playing, it dropped performance of the device by 20%. So you dumb down the system for everyone who bought it on day one release. Okay, Asus. Another problem people are having with the system. They're finding that the analog sticks have dead zone problems, where it's taking too long to read, so it feels like there is a lag in the input of controlling and moving your characters in games that use the analog stick. I barely used the analog sticks, so I didn't really have a problem with it. Because like I said, I don't play first-person shooters or anything on here. So that's another problem stacking up on the system. Okay? You can change the dead zones, do a little adjustments here and there. Hopefully figure that out, and that'll be fine. maybe an update, firmware update will fix that. Okay. Still nothing crazy, nothing that's gonna make me say they can't fix that. My decision is still to keep it. And then a few days later, you're getting reports online of people frying their memory cards. Now it's time to worry. So I'm looking, I'm like, okay, that doesn't sound like something that a firmware can fix. Maybe they can change the fan speed, make it run the system cooler when you're running in 30-watt power. That'll get the heat down. Because if you put your hand at the top of this, those two fans in here are blowing all that air out. It is a lot of heat coming out the top. Not so much on the system at all, but you can feel it at the top. And where the memory card is placed is right where all the exhaust, all that hot exhaust is coming out of. And from my readings online on Reddit, they're saying that it's not the memory card that's getting broken, because you can take that out, use it on other devices, and it runs fine. It's saying that the reader itself in the system is malfunctioning. They don't know if it's because of the heat just yet, but they're saying that the reader in this system is malfunctioning and not reading the cards correctly, or in some cases destroying the card. So it is possibly a heat thing, depending on how much it hits this area. But that has me thinking, if it's a hardware problem, that they're going to have to recall this device. So now my decision is to return this guy, regardless of how much I like it, regardless of what the technology is. It has to go back. I don't know why or how they tested this, where within 2 weeks, the memory cards are failing. The memory card reader is failing. What kind of test did they do on this device? Because they knew that the heat is going right there. They couldn't fit the memory card reader on the bottom of the device where there's absolutely nothing down here. They couldn't put it there, huh? On the side, anywhere else but right at the vent. And I just find it hard to believe that no one stress tested this device. People are putting in 1 terabyte cards, $150 cards, $100 cards in here, and it's malfunctioning, breaking those cards. Update. Now, it's been a while since I recorded that footage. Asus has done a couple of updates to their BIOS to hopefully remedy the problem of the overheating memory cards and the malfunctioning memory card reader. So hopefully in due time we'll find out. But right now, they've upped the fan speed to cool down their internals a bit. So hopefully that memory card problem is a thing of the past. And it looks like there's gonna be no recall. So if you still got the system, you should be all set. And if you wanted one, it's probably gonna be a lot of open box ones with no problems at Best Buy. So my suggestion is to go to Best Buy, try it out in hand, because unfortunately I still returned mine because it was the controls problem with me. The analogs I never really got used to, and the D-pad. I tried playing a lot of 2D emulation, a lot of old school games. They require a lot more precision than a lot of stuff that we play now, because mostly it's all analog. But playing those with the D-pad wasn't cutting it. I wasn't really feeling myself connecting with the games. So had to go back. But I say, if you want, if you're still willing to try it, go to Best Buy, put your hands on it, see if you like the analogs, see if you like the D-pad, try out some games there. And if you like it, I do recommend it, because it's still one of the most powerful devices you can get for the money. It still has the best screen, 120 hertz screen, and it's powerful. It can run everything emulation-wise from the beginning all the way down to Xbox 360, PS3 era. And if you wanna, it can even run Nintendo Switch. And I'm talking like better than the actual system. So that's what I say. I was a little harsh saying that it was a complete wash. If there was a manufacturer defect, then yes, it would have been a complete wash. But since it's not, hopefully, then yeah, give it a shot if you want. But like I said, give it a try and see how you feel. Hands-on. That's the benefit of being at Best Buy. So now that I got that cleared up, back to the old me. The Ally, as much as I love it, as much potential as I thought it had, it's going back. And I'm gonna see what maybe the second generation, if there is one, or the fixed version of this, we'll see. We'll see if there's another edition or see if they fix it. I don't know. But I might have to ride out this year with the Win 4, see what next year brings, see where this portable device generation goes. And I think it's promising. All these devices coming out, I think we're gonna find a happy medium to what people like. As far as battery life and as far as power, I think we're gonna figure it out. I think we're gonna have a lot of stuff to choose from. Right now, I think there's too many to choose from. We'll see where we're at in a year. So, regardless of if you have a Steam Deck, I would say if you have a Steam Deck and you're happy with it and it's running all the games that you play and you're getting a battery life that you like, stick with the Steam Deck. You don't have to update. If your Steam Deck is underpowered and you're a tech geek and you like to have everything running better, then devices like the AO Neo, which I don't have unfortunately, or the GPD Win series, look into those. Try those. They're coming out every month with faster and newer chips. Yeah, you can decide there. Like I said, they're from China, so the warranties of those and the protection, I don't know, the customer support, you're probably not going to get much of it there. But like I said, if you want bleeding edge technology, there's always that route. Unfortunately, in the US, I'm looking for what they're going to do. I was surprised, man. The fact that they were in Best Buy, I think Microsoft is funding this device, the Asus. The fact that they're in Best Buy has made me think that it was going to be a runaway success. But the fact that it could be a recall or a redesign because of a flaw really makes me sad. Because I had high hopes for this device. And I really got used to it. So if they made one again with every improvement that I need, like the D-pad, the analog, the memory card, if they did all that, changed it and fixed it, they should have listened to more feedback before they brought this out. What's cool is though, I do like the buttons, the button size and the feel. I really did like the buttons on here. And the buttons on the back, a huge negative for me. Always, like, who made it so that the buttons on the back here can be hit by mistake constantly while you're playing the system? Constantly. And the fact that if you're controlling something and you hit that button, it will exit you out of the game in seconds. Like, you'll be fighting a boss, boom, you're out of the system. You can't pause, you can't, or it messes up everything, you just lose. Terrible placement. I hate that these buttons are so easily clickable. First thing I did, turn these off. No buttons on the back. Turn it off. In gamepad mode. In desktop mode, sure. I'll use them. It's fine. In gaming mode, these buttons are unusable. Awful back buttons on the Ally. But after I turned them off, good grip, felt great. They do nothing. That was wonderful. So I don't know who designed that. Bad design on the back. But, like I said, if you want bleeding edge, deal with something from China right now. If you're cool with the Steam Deck and happy with the upgrades they're doing, don't need to play everything in 60 frames. 40 frames is fine. If you run a bunch of emulators, if that's all you want to do with this stuff, this Steam Deck is divine. It's stupendous for that type of use. Still playing AAA titles. There's workarounds to play Diablo 4. You can play Street Fighter 6. It might be harder and harder to play these newer games as they come out with the Steam Deck as it grows older. But I'm constantly surprised by how much you can do with the Steam Deck without a crazy amount of problems trying to run games. This is, like I said, the console. This is the PC. It's broken right now. This is the one. This is the PC, even stronger, but problems. So for now, stick with the Steam Deck, unless you want something more powerful. Then you can do something from China. So let me know in the comments below what you think of the handheld situation that we're in right now. And if you have one, whether it be a Steam Deck or a multitude of others, let me know in the comments what you think of them. And if you're gonna upgrade or if you're interested in getting them. So until then, this is Stikz signing off. Level 857, the spot for your couch co-op gameplay and awesome video game podcast every Wednesday. Be sure to check it out. Like and subscribe. We out. Peace. And just to let you know, here's a schedule, a quick rundown on what we do on Level 857 here each week. Be sure to check us out. Till next time.